So here is a quick overview of the study and the data used for the study proposed by Ernesto Cavaletti on national rankings. So I see also Stefan Gershevsky is interested in being involved in this study. And I'm not sure if we want to do it as one big study or many little studies. I can envision that it would be publishable as a series of independent quick reports, or maybe substantial studies on each of those differently. On each of those measures separately. And so we talked about ranking nations using these culture data on all kinds of things: conflict resolution styles, propensity to have conflicts, English proficiency, technical proficiency, leadership inclinations, all kinds of things that we can decide, literally rank countries on. We have enough reports, enough data, at least at the individual level, for a bunch of countries, and we can rank them on those constructs. And so let me share the screen and show you what kind of data I'm preparing for this study. And again, if I miss something, let me know. We hopefully will be able to add more data later. So at the individual level here, let's look at what seems relevant. So first of all, we will do the team and person ID data. But then we will do demographics. I'm not sure if we need it, but we'll probably want to use it as a control, at least for some of those studies. It wouldn't make sense to rank nations on age or gender, right? But for example, like work experience, we might want to do that. So we have work experience, international experience. Are students of the same age in different countries more or less experienced? Seems like a very interesting question here. Acquaintanceship test, we probably don't want to do a whole paper on this, but I don't know. This is a measure of to what extent team members know each other at the personal level. And who knows, maybe people from some countries are more likely to get acquainted with their team members than people from other countries. And so it seems like a relevant construct here. Attribution bias, definitely an interesting one. So do people attribute success or failure to themselves or to others? So this seems like a very interesting thing here. Barriers to to effectiveness of the team, like perceptions to what extent people expect or observe cultural values, time zone differences, language differences, stereotypes to be a problem. I'll include it here just because it seems to me, it would be interesting. Like, for example, to what extent do people in different countries expect national stereotypes to be a problem? Or to what extent did they experience those to be a problem? So I don't know. It seems like maybe, the way the number of foreigners who live in that country, or other indicators of, maybe like national minorities or something like that. Do those make people more or less likely to expect problems or to observe them when they happen? So I'll include it for now. Communication style definitely seems relevant. So do people from some countries are more likely to use a more accommodating or confrontational communication style? Communication frequency, I don't know. Let's include that because, actual, talkativeness, to what extent people thought, people talk to their team members. Is this true that people, for example, from, Finland tend to talk less than people from Mexico? So it seems to me like it's a useful study here. We have the use of tools, and I'm not sure, again, this is probably more technology availability, so I'll skip it for now. But if you think we want to add it later, we'll do that. So it shouldn't be a problem. Communication tools, ease of use, to what extent did they find easy or difficult to use these different tools? We did it for a different study, but I don't know, maybe it will be useful to rank nations on this, essentially proficiency of communication tool use. Let's see. Conflict frequency seems like a very relevant thing. So which nation is the most confrontational and gets the most into the conflicts versus the least? Conflict resolution styles, similar to communication styles, seems like a relevant thing. Coordination schedule, it seems like it's more affected by the team, not by the nationality, so I'll skip it. I'm also skipping the nationality, the cultural intelligence, because we have a whole separate study on this, so just to not mix the two and not confound them, I'll skip the cultural intelligence, because, as I said, we have a separate study on this. Cultural background, to what extent people come from, which country they come, obviously is necessary so that we can rank nations. So that's the most important thing. but I will also include cultural experience and cultural people who come from multiple cultural backgrounds. Again, just to see if students in some countries are more multicultural than in others. We probably don't need it, but if we wanted to rank nations on multiculturalism of their regular business students, I suppose we can do that. I don't know if we need cultural values per se, but I will add them here. And I think the two instruments that are most prevalent and best in our data set, just in case if some of those rankings can be explained by individualism, collectivism, power distance, orientation, I'll include that here. Emotional intelligence seems like a very interesting construct to rank nations on. Which country is the most emotionally intelligent? So we'll include that. Grit, that's another measure. So everybody talks about grit now, how it's important for success, how it's not about IQ, but it's about persistence, about grit. So let's see which nation has the most grit, is the most persevering and the most dedicated and never gives up. Language skills seems like a very important measure. So is it true that English-speaking countries are more English, proficient in English or not? Maybe it is the Scandinavians, which at least in some semesters when I checked, seems to score higher on English than the Brits or Americans. Leadership will have a separate measure, your role, and that would be in peer evaluations. But for example, locus of control, again, another thing, so an attribution bias. So let's include that in interesting. Motivation, which nations are the most motivated, based on the motivation to participate in the project. So I'll include that. Let's see what else we have. Participation, that's about the team, so we don't really need that. Peak performance, that would be interesting, but we don't, we have a separate study on this. Peer evaluations, this one's tricky because remember, Ernesto, we did have a whole study on peer evaluations. Well, I guess that's by the rank of the university, so not by the country. So let's add that here. But one more thing that I will add here is self-evaluations. And I warn you against using this one because we have a separate study going on with Peter Mengeson, where we calculate the gap between self-evaluations and peer evaluations and do a whole study on essentially self-promotion. So for which countries this gap is the largest, which countries people give themselves greater evaluations than what they get from the team members. So we have a whole separate study dedicated to it, but just in case we need it at some point, I included here. Perceived cultural difficulties and differences, very, very interesting one. So we asked at the beginning of the semester and then again at the end, to what extent team members see or expect difficulties with their team members from different cultures, and to what extent do they think it will be easy or difficult or similar or different. So we ask how difficult would it be to work with the countries represented in your team, and how similar or different do you see those team members. And again, it's essentially kind of a perception of cultural bias measure. And so we can test which nations are the most biased or expect the most problems when working with internationals, and which ones see the fewest or expect the fewest problems and differences. Personality, yeah, let's test which nation is the most open to experience or neurotic or I don't know, conscientious and all of that. So it seems like a very interesting thing. Let's even include proactive personality. Which nations have the most proactive personality, and vice versa. Punctuality, this one's a little tricky because time zone differences could affect this measure. And the reason for that is, if the deadline is midnight, the US time, then Asians sort of have an advantage because for them the day ends earlier, so they will probably submit earlier. But let's test. Let's see if punctuation, if punctuality differs by country. Readiness tests, in a sense, that's kind of IQ, and I'll include only the total score. Where is it? Score right here. So again, it's not the typical IQ test, but let's see which nations were the most prepared when we look at this. Satisfaction, Happy Nation. I even literally published a paper some time ago called Happy Nation, and it was about how different cultural values correlate with happiness. So well, we can do the same thing here and see students from which countries are the most satisfied with their team, report, quality, project itself, professor. So let's see which countries are the happiest. Self-efficacy are obviously, let's see who's most confident in their ability to do things. What else? Propensity to trust, a wonderful one. So that's how likely you are to trust strangers. And so let's find the most trusting nation and the least trusting. Team chemistry. To what extent do you talk with your team about things not related to the task at hand? Like movies and hobbies and, dating and whatever else. So let's see which nation tends to be the most, task oriented and never talks about anything else, and who is a little bit more open here. Team climate, that's a little bit more about team itself, so that's probably less relevant here. Confidence in your team, probably less, Team identification, I don't know, but let's test. So people from which countries are more likely to become, to start seeing themselves as part of their team, to identify with the team. So let's do that. Or trust their team members for that matter, right? And we have a bunch of measures here. And I don't think we need all of the other ones. That's for other studies, so I'll exclude these. We don't need them here. And I think we will be using only the individual level data here. I included the code book for the team level data, but I don't think we need that. The only reason we might want to use it if for any of those ratings, you want to do like control, like for team size, maybe for team diversity. So like, for example, if you wanted to test to what extent people trust each other or to what extent people, are happy with the team, maybe you want to control for the team level, like diversity or team size or, percent male. So maybe those things matter to some extent and you want to control for them. So include that as well. But yep, that's what we have here. And yep, if I missed anything, let me know. If I included too much, that's fine. We can always delete it. And yeah, it seems to me like we have a dozen papers here. Maybe a quick research note, maybe a big substantive paper with all kinds of external archival data explaining those differences. But it seems to me that it's a huge, huge potential here. So we can literally get a dozen publications out of this data set.